Hey, I'm going to go through sections of the IECC. This is the 2021 edition. I want to show you some of the highlights I have, as well as show you an online utility for studying for the Residential Energy Inspector and Plans Examiner certification as administered through the International Code Council. Before starting on doing that, I want to show you this website that I developed. It's free of charge, but there really are no good Residential Energy Inspector Examiner questions out there. You have to pay for some, but they're pretty lame. There's some, there's a couple, 50 question tests, things like that. The questions at the ICC level for the test, it's 60 questions. You have 2 hours to complete the test. So here's 5 quizzes based upon R Chapter 1 through R5. They also include appendices RA, RB, and RC. And so let me just show you that. Each of these particular quizzes have 75 questions, except for the last one. It automatically scores it, and this will help you go through the residential portion of the IECC and prep for the Residential Energy Inspector and Plans Examiner. It automatically grades, so if you go down to the bottom here, like what is recirculating hot water system according to the code, specifically designed water distribution system with pump circulated heating water, you can submit it. It highlights which ones are wrong in red, shows you the right one in green. If you're colorblind or insensitive to red-green, you can zoom in, shows the colors better. The other thing this does is it shows you the reference, so you're given the reference right here. R202, that's the definitions in the IECC, as with all ICC code books. Chapter 2 is for definitions. So you can regrade it as well. Let's look at question 74. What document is required to be left after installation of insulation materials without an observable manufacturer's mark? It's an insulation certificate complying with section R303.11. You can go ahead and resubmit. It shows you, you're correct on 2. I've only answered 2 questions out of the 75. So that way you can grade yourself, you can make improvements. The references are right there for every question, so you can look them up. So let me just take a look. Let me show you really quick how I use this utility and how you could use it as well. So here's my residential section of the IECC. And this particular, I like defining the acronyms at the beginning of every section or every book, ICC book that I'm referencing. But let me just go through this. I've taken this test. Let me tell you what's on the test. I'll show you the references for it, and then I'll show you how to use that online internet tutorial. So a couple things. You kind of got to know where it applies to. The question on the test, it gave you a question saying, which of these applies to the residential portions of the IECC? And the question was a warehouse converted to a 3-story, I think it's apartment building. Yeah, an apartment building. Or the other 3 answers were like, I don't even remember. The right answer was a warehouse, but what you need to know is this does not apply to R1. That would be like motels. This applies to R2, R3, R4, but it goes through and tells you it's residential building sites. Everything italicized residential, it's going to be in section 2, chapter 2. So if you just jump over to the actual definition in chapter 2 of residential, it'll show you what the definition is. So in this case, here's the definition: residential building. So it's a detached 1- and 2-family dwellings, townhouses, groups R2, R3, and R4, 3 stories or less in height. So don't let that catch you. I think one of the questions of the 4, besides the one I already gave you, was like there's a couple 4-story buildings, things like that. There's even an assembly occupancy in the list, which was kind of lame. Okay, let me go back to chapter 1. The most restrictive, this was asked, which one are you going to use? If you have your standard code, IECC, as well as reference documents, which one do you use? It's going to be the IECC. It's the specific code. Just highlight the stuff I've highlighted. I gave you the references in the prep course. So you can just use the references that I gave. If you do that, there's a couple things that are not in the or in the ICC questions on the test, but you'll be able to find them. There's only a couple I couldn't find, but if you go through the prep course, you'll be able to do this without a problem. Okay, code official shall be permitted to deem a national, state, or local energy efficiency program to exceed energy efficiency requirements. Let's see. The code official is authorized to waive the requirements for construction documents. In other words, this section tells you what needs to be on your construction documents, but the reality is a lot of times for like de minimis stuff, your code official doesn't need it or doesn't want to deal with it, says, hey, you don't have to do it. You'll always be given that option. The plans need to be stamped, reviewed for code compliance. If you have some work going on there, you need to that they don't have a permit for, or is not in your original plans, you need to resubmit documents for approval. Yeah, it's all going to be pretty straightforward, I think, if you just go through and look at those questions I've created. They're not perfect questions. I used artificial intelligence to help with that. As it turned out, well, let's keep on going here. This is good to know, like footing and foundation inspection. You need what do you need to look for this? R value, stuff like that, versus a framing and rough in. Don't apply interior finish before your rough in. This is interesting too. Notice of approval. That's what they call it, rather than occupancy permit. It's notice of approval is what they call it after the code official has reviewed or inspected the structure. All this stuff you'll find just in my questions that I created. So I'm not going to, go through them. I just want you to get a feel for what's on the test. Obviously, the ICC has a superset they can draw from. I'm just showing you the ones that I saw or that I had tough times identifying. Yeah, like I mentioned, this is definitely one that I had to look up. They had a couple of questions from Summit County, Colorado. So if you're here, just realize Summit County is a designation as 7 for climate zone. Another one, I'm trying to think, North Carolina. They stayed at a house in North Carolina. Most of that's 3. I don't think the question actually needed it, but I had 2 specific questions on climate zone 7 for Summit County, Colorado. Didn't have any questions here. I mean, you'd think you'd have had some questions about like interior design conditions for heating and cooling, but actually I didn't. In certificate, an insulation certificate complying with section 303.1.1. I did have a question from this section here. Did have kind of a secondary question. It gave you a list of things. This was one of them. You needed to know NRFC, and I'm trying to think what it was. If the window created a job site, how do you verify its U factor? Do you have to have it NFRC certified? No. Give you a list, and it's actually right over here. This is what you do for like, I think the answer was through inspection, you verify, is it double pane, single pane, that kind of thing. And this table will tell you what they are. I'm not going to go through and explain all this because if you go through the curriculum that I developed, you can figure all this stuff out. I'm just going to show you the highlights and notes and talk about the test. So installation, always according to manufacturer's instructions. That was a question. Extend not less than 6 inches below grade. I think I had one there as well. Yeah, and then maintenance. Maintenance instructions shall be furnished for equipment and systems that require preventative maintenance. Regular maintenance actions shall be clearly stated and incorporated on a readily visible label. So basically, this section here, I had a question from R303.3. Yeah, sorry for the silence here. Just thinking, some of these questions are just new, and I just can't even remember them because they were just kind of obvious. Yeah, this threw me. This is one thing prep on. I had a question. So climate zone 4. Let's see, what was it? Climate zone 4. But it was marine. This is climate zone 4 except marine, and it was crawl space wall U factor 0.065. And I didn't know what the answer was. I mean, I don't know, where is marine at? I just don't deal with marine stuff. I'm in the middle of the Rocky Mountains. We don't have that. So I didn't know what to answer for that. I just threw down 0.065 because I really didn't know. But that'd be something to brush up on. Did get a question about this. This is another Summit County, Colorado question. The question was maximum U factor, footnote F. So footnote F, so fenestration U factor, I think it was climate zone 7. The number is actually 0.32. It's not 0.3, it's 0.32. So, they're trying to throw you a little bit, and that's because it's above 4,000 feet. You got to look at that footnote. Let's see. Had a question on slabs. It actually gave you a picture, and it was, what's the insulation required under slab? And it gave you some different options. One was R15. I don't think that was correct, but just know how to do that. I don't remember. Fortunately, I don't remember a lot about it, but it gave you. Man, I'd like to say it was. A 4, climate zone 4, but I just can't remember. But the point was, you just got to kind of know. There's a section on slabs. We'll get to it, but there's a section on slabs that tell you specifically what you need to do for heated slabs. So let's keep on going. Ceilings with attics. I had a question about. So if you have a penetration through the attic, through a ventilated attic for a skylight, well, what does that penetration, that wall, look like? And what it is, the insulation on that wall, I put down that it's the same as wall insulation here. Wood frame wall R value, I can't remember. I think it was, like climate zone 3 or something. So it gave you one of those options. And there's actually a statement about that in somewhere. But the point is, you're going to treat that penetration the same as you would a standard wall. I had another question on doors. Oh, eave. Let's keep on going. Eave baffles. Had a question here. The answer was the baffle is permitted to be any solid material. That's the answer. It's right there. The baffle shall be permitted to be any solid material. Had a question on access hatches and doors. I think this was a Summit, Colorado question. So. Summit County, Colorado, so climate zone 7, had a door on a house like 9,000 feet high. What's the minimum R value or something like that? So in this case, what it says is shall be insulated to the same R value required by table 402.1.3 for the wall or ceiling in which they are installed. Okay, so that's just, it was an exterior door, even though it says access hatches and doors from conditioned to unconditioned spaces, such as attics and crawl spaces. Okay, great. Well, I just assumed it would apply to a door. Now, I recognize it's not always the case. I don't know this very well. I just don't know this, but that's what I put down. You can correct me if I was off. They had a question, mass walls. The question was, which of this list of 4 items is not considered a part of mass walls? The answer is brick, but not brick, it's not brick veneer. Not brick veneer was the answer. You had a question on steel frame ceilings and walls. The question was steel frame wall 16 inches on center. It had an R20 normally, and I think the answer was R19 plus 7.8. I think that was the option that you were given. That's correct. Let's see. I mean, just lots of standard questions on, insulation, ceiling. Let's see. Okay, you were asked this. Insulation extending away from the building shall be protected by pavement or by not less than 10 inches. So that's one of the questions I have in this practice exam came right off of that. Okay, here, this is a question. Crawl space walls. So regarding the thermal insulation, 402, what was the title again? Building thermal envelope. So under building thermal envelope, the question was, which of these does not require ventilation or something like that? And the exemptions here, crawl space walls associated with a crawl space that is vented to the outdoors. So you don't have to insulate your crawl space walls if it's vented to the outdoors. It gives you that allowance right there. Okay. Man, you got to forgive me. This 15 square feet did come up. It was one of the options, but it wasn't the right one, so I didn't pay attention to it. But you saw that as one of the multiple choice answers. Okay. Inflation. You did have some questions from table 402.4.1.1. Specifically, narrow cavities. There was a multiple choice question about insulating regarding the thermal envelope. And all you had to remember is, like narrow cavities has to be air sealed. Okay, so you don't have to have insulation, and narrow cavities of 1 inch or less that are not able to be insulated shall be air sealed. So that was a multiple choice item in there. I don't remember the question specifically, but it was referenced from this table. Had a couple, recessed lighting. The question was, shall be airtight and IC rated, or which of these applies to recessed lighting? And the right answer was not IC rated. So which of these, the list of fours, is not correct, and it was non-IC rated. So it's right there. Your recessed lighting has to be IC rated. That was the option. You had some testing specs. So here, 5 air changes per hour was one of the answers. Another question was when you're doing the fan test here, the blower test, your interior doors have to be open. They didn't word it like that. It was a little bit different, but that's what it was. You had 2 questions from leakage rate. Now, it was fenestration air leakage. Here it is, the fenestration air leakage. The 0.3 and 0.5, those were correct answers on 2 different questions. So know that. Here, rooms containing, no, that wasn't fuel burning. Basically, there was a separate question. The answer was R8. It's not this one. I'll find it when we get there. Okay, just bear with me. Sorry for the pause. I'm just trying to think. Okay, this was interesting. The question was, you have an addition. A 500 square foot addition was mounted on the house. No, hold on. I'll give you the specific question. You have an existing 1,200 square foot house. The furnace was sized for that house. You're adding an 1,800 square foot addition. So what's your heating system going to look like? And they gave you 4 options. The correct answer was the new addition is going to have its own furnace and its own programmable. So there's two answers for the own furnace. One was an analog type, old style thermostat. The other one was a programmed, capable of controlling the heating and cooling system on a daily schedule to maintain. Anyway, the point is the thermostat had to be digital and capable of programmed. It had to be programmable. And right here it says not less than one thermostat shall be provided for each separate heating and cooling system. So those are your answers that led to this answer here for that particular question. Ducts located outside of conditioned space. So yeah, here it is, R8, right? Yeah, R8. So what they had an 8-inch duct outside of conditioned space. What's the minimum R value? It's R8. That's what it was. And let's see here. Had a question, but I can't remember what it was. Oh yeah, ducts located in conditioned space. You don't have to insulate it, basically, is what it came down to. That was a response. So they gave two questions. One, where are these locations can an uninsulated duct be placed? And one was a hallway closet. The other was in a vented basement, blah, 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 blah. The answer, obviously, is the hallway closet. And then the other one, where can what insulation do you need on a duct of such and such parameter going through a house? And the answer was no insulation. Oh yeah, I was asked this. So new air handlers, what's percent of the design airflow rate is allowed for leakage? It's 2%. That came right off the test. And then you have this, 0.1. Total leakage shall be measured here, rough and test, post-construction, 0.1. So you had those. I think you had one here too. I don't remember what it was. It was 4, I think. 4 cubic feet per minute under R403.3.6. Yeah, you had a question here. The question was, I can't remember the size of the piping. Mechanical systems, it was a 200 degree Fahrenheit liquid, transferring in a pipe. And I think it was through conditioned space. What insulation did you need? In this case, it was R3 as a minimum. That was there. Okay. Yeah, you had some questions here, I think. I recall at least one regarding this mechanical ventilation efficacy. I don't remember what it was, though. You had a question on pools and spas. You had two questions. So the answer was readily accessible. So the on-off switch that is an integral part of the heater for this pool has to be within ready access. So that was the answer for the particular one. You had another question. Heaters, they can't have continuously burning ignition pilots for pools. So that was another question I was asked on this. Oh yeah, and then, no, it wasn't that one. There's another one. Never mind. I'll get to it. Oh yeah, you had a question here. Lighting controls, which one needs a dimmer? And the answer was a bedroom. They gave it bathroom, hallways, and exterior lighting as your other options. Yeah, bear with me, guys. Sorry. Just trying to think. Yeah, I don't remember what it was. I might have just bypassed it. Another question was your PV, your solar ready home. What do you need in the report? And it was the PV size, inverter efficiency, tilt, and orientation. Those are the three answers you needed. I'd have to find where that was, and I don't want to take the time. But if I missed it, that was the question that was asked. Okay, so the standard design versus basically the simulated design versus standard design. What is different? Okay, so table 405.4.2. parenthesis 1. They gave you four options. I remember two: internal gains and R value. The other ones were obviously not correct. So I wasn't sure in making your comparison with software between simulated and proposed or standard. What is it? What differences are they? An internal gain says same as standard reference design. That's why I didn't choose that one. So I went with R value for the answer. Okay, minimum capabilities. I was asked on this. What was it? The answer I gave was had to do with components. I don't remember where it is, but you'll be asked about this. Just go through that. Now, yeah, I'm trying to make this quick. I don't want to waste your time, but I also want to be comprehensive. The point is, I honestly think if you go through my training curriculum, which I'll explain, you'll be able to address those unknowns. So let's just keep on going through this. Just bear with me. Yeah, I wish I had a better memory on it. I slammed it out really quick, and I just didn't think about memorizing the answers on that. It's a fairly small test. It's only 60 questions, 2 hours, obviously. It's a crunch time, but they're not. Oh, okay, yeah, I remember one other question. Here it is. We'll go back to the fenestration section. I don't want to miss this. So fenestration. Let me jump over to the next page regarding this kind of stuff. So here's the question. What is the UA for, the numbers are as follows. The average UA, U factor times area, and they had 4 windows. So 2 were 6 feet by 6 feet 8 inches with a U factor of 0.54, and then you had 2 different windows. One was a 4 by 5 with fenestration U factor, I think it was 0.35, and the other one similarly was a 4 by 5 with a fenestration U factor of 0.3 or something like that. So how you calculate that, let me explain how you do that. You would take the overall area of the windows. In this case, it was 120 square feet. So 20 square feet plus 20 square feet plus the 2 6 by 6, 8 windows ended up being 80 square feet. So 120 square feet. So 80 square feet divided by 120 square feet times 0.54 plus 20 over 120. That's 20 square feet divided by 120 square feet times the 0.35 plus 0.3 or whatever it was divided by, multiplied by 20 times 100. I'm sorry, 0.3 multiplied by 20 over 120. Okay, so you're just taking area ratios, trying to calculate what the overall U factor is. And that number ended up being 0.47 is what the correct answer. So I just gave you an answer if you're asked that, so should work. I had no questions on tropical climate zone. And honestly, I don't think ERI or additional efficiency had any questions from this section. I could be wrong, but I don't think so. Existing buildings, I did have a couple questions from this one. One right here. Okay, right here. So provisions of this code, do they apply to historic buildings? It gave you a list of the 4 multiple choice items. And it says, which of these does the IECC not apply to? And it was historic building that demonstrating that compliance could not be done is what it was for additions. You did have a couple addition questions. Like I said, I already gave you the one on the 1,800 square foot addition, but you had a couple 500 square foot addition questions as well. And one question was, we're adding 500 square feet to, you're adding 500 square feet to the structure. Well, what do you have to do? Basically, what does this affect? Does the existing building get affected? The answer to that's no. Do you So basically, all that had to be updated was the ducting for that particular building, that addition, 500 square feet. It's that kind of stuff. It's pretty straightforward. It's not really challenging. Lighting, 2 questions on lighting. I already gave you one. I don't remember what the other one was, but it wasn't a big deal. It wasn't hard to figure out. Had one question on what do you have to get a permit for, basically, for alterations. I know a roof replacement was one of them as an option. Anyway, just know this section here for alterations, for like replacement of roofs, windows, that kind of thing. I mentioned before replacement fenestration, or maybe I didn't mention it. There is a question here as well. Don't remember exactly what that was. Okay, the rest of this, though, I did have to look up one thing from Chapter 6 in reference standards. It was ASTM 283, I think. Yeah, E283. It was asking the question about determining U factor, and this applies to air leakage, not U factor. So I was able to, say that didn't apply. Board of Appeals. I didn't have to answer anything from Appendix RA, nothing from Appendix RB, nothing from Appendix RC. So what I'm getting at is really easy. I mean, not easy. It was actually, I always struggle on every test I take. Don't get me wrong. I worry about it, but I press that complete or complete button or submit button, fairly confident that I didn't have any issues. So, it's not a big deal. Okay, so the reality is you're just going through this section. Most of this are these tables for different climate zones, but outside of that, it's a small section you have to know. I mean, that's it right there. That's it. You're just kind of ignoring this section here in the middle because you don't need that. So it's just a handful of pages that you have to go through. So let me now show you how this system works. If you go over here, so let me just come back here. Let me reduce this. So this is at this website. I just happen to have some extra space here at catchsunlight.com. QFPE. QFP stands for Qualified Fire Protection Engineer. It's just something I put together to help people be QFPEs. But energy really isn't QFPE. I just thought I'd throw it in there because I had a place. So down here at the bottom, it's Residential Energy Inspector Examiner. There's 75 questions each, except for Quiz 5, which is 69. I was too lazy to write 6 more. But understand there's a process for this. So to do this, I used artificial intelligence to generate these quizzes, like I already said. But what's ICC going to do? When they go through it, they're going to look for things that are obvious in developing their quizzes. So what I found is the AI-generated stuff was fairly good. Like I said, I use these appendices, RA, RB, and RC in that test. Don't worry about the appendix-related stuff for your references because I saw no questions on that. It all came from R1 through R5. But what you need to do, this is very important, okay? Highlight each item, underline keywords in those questions, and go through it 4 times. You need to go through it 4 times. It may sound kind of dumb to do that, but by not going through 4 times, you're just not going to see where the stuff is. And it's a matter of knowing where it is. A lot of the questions in this series of exams, they're verbatim. They're just straight, exact wording. But some of the questions from the test clearly were not. But by going through this, you'll remember and be able to see where it is. So let's just quickly look at a couple things. I already showed you how this works. Let's just take a look. What happens to, so I'm looking at chapter 10. I'm looking at question 10. What happens to construction documents after they are reviewed for code compliance? And I give you the reference here, R103.3.1. So if I jump over to R103.3.1, let me just jump through all this stuff. 103.3. So 103.3.1, 103.2, 103.3, 103.3.1. Okay, so they need to be stamped, reviewed for code compliance, and one set of construction documents shall be retained by the code official. So if you look, the answer is right there. So number 10, the answer is this, number C. It's the third one down. So that's all you need to do. Just go through this, all these questions. Kind of good stuff. I appreciate watching this video. It's just out here to help people. If you can benefit from this, great. One thing that's on my agenda, I'd like to get a detailed website that basically goes through all the ICC certs, at least the 18 I've done, and just help people be able to get them. Artificial intelligence helps generate questions. I can't emphasize enough, I personally don't learn by just reading the code book. I just can't get there. I only can learn by doing the questions. It's how I benefit from learning the code. So I'm assuming you might be the same, maybe not. But if you just pick up the code book and read, boy, I don't think you're going to be able to answer the questions on the test. But this method seems to work very well for me. Anyway, good luck to you. Really appreciate watching this video. And boy, I hope maybe, come up to me at an ICC conference or something and say hi. Love to have some input, some feedback, maybe some positive direction that I can take these videos that helps people. So, hey, see you soon. Have a good one.